Hey, what's happening, guys? What is going on YouTube? You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. Today is Monday, January 23rd, 2023. We're going to be covering a bunch of business news, a bunch of news about the economy. We're going to be talking about the stock market, sharing kind of the recent layoffs with you guys. It's not just layoffs that we have to be concerned about. I have kind of a personal anecdote. I have some friends and family members who work in the trucking industry, and a lot of people who are into freight sales and things like that, who were making, that's an industry where you can make really, really good money with only a high school education. A lot of people who are making $500,000 a year, their commissions are being taken away. They're now given base salaries. I have another friend who works in the trucking industry, and they had a low base salary, but were able to make well into the six figures with commissions. They're basically being cut and given, I'll get into this in more detail in a minute here, but they're basically being given a base salary in the 50,000 something range, and then the opportunity to earn bonuses. But, a lot of these people in the trucking industry who are making six figures and multiple six figures are now probably going to be lucky to crack $100,000. We got more tech layoffs, more layoffs overall, a whole lot of stuff to talk about in today's video. I'm actually making this video on Sunday, January 22nd, 2023. I've been craving a roast and like potatoes and carrots. I'm about to pop a roast in here in a little bit, and I went grocery shopping last night. Normally I shop at Aldi. Normally I shop at the discount grocers. There's another grocery store in the Chicagoland area called Pete's. They got really good produce, really good fruits and vegetables. And I normally go to one in a city that's not as nice. Prices are pretty reasonable. Occasionally I will see things that are crazy prices. I talked about the other week how like 2 heads of romaine lettuce were over $7, and I was like, I guess I can just go without salad. I went to a Pete's that was in a nicer suburb last night. And, I was shocked just looking at prices. Like, there wasn't a single box of cereal under $7. And just a lot of the other things I was looking at were really pricey. Now, again, Pete's is a little bit more of a pricier grocery store than Aldi. And this one was in a nicer city, which I imagine is why the prices were a little bit higher. But, they tell us inflation is coming down. It doesn't quite look like that when you're at the grocery store. And then one other thing before we kind of jump into today's video, I've been kind of giving some movie suggestions, show suggestions, things like that. One of my buddies is heading out of town. He's moving out of town for a couple months, and so I had him over, got some wings, and we were watching a movie, hanging out with some friends on Friday night. And we watched a movie called Menu. Menu is on whatever the HBO streaming service is called. The girl from Queen's Gambit is in it, John Leguizamo, a couple other famous people that you'd recognize. Basically, all these rich people go to a fancy restaurant, and then the chef, is basically rich, fancy people have ruined his love of cooking, and he kind of decides to take it out on all these rich people. Really kind of crazy, weird movie. Normally not the type of film that I enjoy watching, but it kept me engaged the entire time, and it was really good. So I would recommend checking out that movie, Menu. And before we kind of jump into today's video, shout out to the sponsor of today's video, Merch Informer. Merch Informer is your all-in-one tool for selling on Amazon merch. They have analytics tools, keyword research tools, so you know what to put in your Amazon merch listings, or even Redbubble listings for that matter, what types of tags to use to get your design seen. They also have a trademark protection tool where you can search the keywords and the phrases that you're putting in into Amazon merch to make sure you don't get any takedowns. I think I talked in a video the other day about how I had a bunch of like 6-year-old t-shirts from like back in 2016 that were taken down for using the word Ethereum. So it seems like Ethereum is cracking down on their trademark. And even if you just utter the word Ethereum in an Amazon merch listing, the t-shirt could get taken down. So that trademark protection tool comes in handy. They also have a built-in t-shirt designer, an automation tool, keyword research, and a whole lot more. So check out the link in the description box below. So Friday was the last day that the markets were open. The Dow closed up about 330 points. The Nasdaq closed up 1.74%. The S&P 500 closed up 2%. And crypto's just been kind of trading sideways the past couple days, although it is up big over the past week. So we've been hearing a lot about tech layoffs, the Google, the Microsoft, the Twitter layoffs. They always make big news, but we are starting to see more layoffs in smaller companies and in other industries as well. In November and December, 43% of small businesses couldn't pay their rent. Over 50% of restaurants couldn't pay their rent. On top of that, and this is on top of the businesses that we lost from 2020 to 2022 during the beer cough. And I think this is kind of the highlight of today's video. So I have a number of friends and family members who work in the trucking industry. My brother-in-law has a family trucking business that hauls like rocks and stone and stuff like that for the construction industry, like road construction industry. He also has a couple semi-trucks that he bought that he just kind of runs drivers independently with. And they also repair trucks as well. I also have a couple other friends who are in the, I guess, freight sales or freight brokering. And that's an interesting industry, right? Like if you are in freight brokering or freight sales, you really only need a high school education. You don't need a college diploma. And there are people making well into the six figures. I know some of the people at one of my friends' offices were making upwards of $500,000 a year. Recently, the trucking company they work for, they're going through the third round of layoffs. They've been heavily laying off management. I think they may have even laid off some of the upper management. But you know, that's not the worst part. The worst part is that their commissions are being taken from them. So there were some people making upwards of $500,000 a year. I don't really understand exactly what's going on, if they're capping commissions or taking away commissions entirely and putting them on a salary. But people who are making $500,000 a year are now being dropped down to $150,000 salary with pretty small bonuses. So they'll probably be lucky to crack $200,000 a year. My friend was probably making $150,000 a year. They are going to be knocked down to about a $57,000 base salary with the opportunity to earn bonuses of like $300 at a pop. You know, I don't care how many $300 bonuses you have. It's going to be hard with earning $300 bonuses to get back up to $150,000 a year. And this friend of mine, like, what other opportunities are there out there? Like, if you're good at sales, yeah, you can get a sales job anywhere and make some money. But you're starting to see the same thing happen across a lot of other industries. And people who kind of had gotten accustomed to making $150,000, $200,000, $300,000, even $500,000 a year are now really kind of being knocked down a couple pegs and are going to have a hard time getting by. This is even more troubling when you look at the stat that, what is it, 68% of millennials earning six figures still say they're living paycheck to paycheck. So, you know, if you're earning $150,000, $300,000, $500,000 a year and you're banking a couple $100,000 a year, you know, you're prepared for a downturn. But if you buy a nice house, buy a nice car, buy some nice bags, eat out a lot, take a lot of vacations, and you're living paycheck to paycheck, it's going to be quite an adjustment going from earning $150,000 a year to earning $68,000 a year. The same friend of mine who works in the freight and logistics area is being called back into the office 3 days a week when they had been fully remote for the past 2 or 3 years. Lots of people are leaving their company, and this person told me, you know, there's really no incentive for me to work hard. That's an industry where you really work hard. You put in 10-hour days. You don't get a lunch break. You're on the phone all day long. Well, if your incentive to work hard is an extra $300 as opposed to an extra $100,000, what incentive is there to work hard? Let's see. Let's talk about the inflation on tech salaries. So I've kind of seen this discussion popping up, you know, especially with the layoffs at Google and a lot of other companies. And, you know, I saw a post on Reddit the other day. Some guy was saying, oh, you know, I make over $600,000 a year and my wife makes $280,000 a year. We bought a home for $3.2 million. And I recently lost my job, and they're trying to figure out, you know, how are they going to continue to live their lifestyle? And this is just kind of something that I've put together, seeing comments and things like that from people who work in the tech industry, people who are programmers and coders. And basically the idea being that there's been an inflation on tech salaries for the past decade or more. It kind of started with Google and Facebook offering very, very high salaries to try to poach the best workers from the other company. That then trickled down to other tech companies, maybe not to the level of Facebook and Google, but definitely salaries got inflated. Well, if the highest paid people are going to be making $680,000 a year, you know, that in turn is going to kind of bump up the salaries of the people under them. That's going to bump up the cost of real estate in those areas, which means that everybody who works for these companies needs to make a little bit more to be able to live as well. And basically, we've seen a huge inflation in tech salaries. This is kind of a completely separate story, though it does tie in a little bit. We had the World Economic Forum meeting at Davos last week, and they had kind of talked about how they wanted to see the salary of a coder or programmer being brought more in line with that of somebody who makes sandwiches. Now, obviously, if you have a unique skill, you're always going to be paid a premium, but the WEF basically doesn't want certain people earning high amounts of money. They want everybody to kind of be brought down a peg so that everybody can kind of be more in line. And another thing to think about, you know, a lot of these tech companies, they've been running for the past decade on VC money on cheap loans, and now that the cheap money is gone, now that the VC money is gone, now that these companies actually have to turn a profit and they can't just operate on getting endless amounts of free money, they're going to have to get leaner. They're going to have to figure out a way to actually make money. And how crazy is it? Like, how can you have a company or even an industry where, people are making $300,000 a year, $400,000 a year, $500,000 a year, $600,000 a year, and they're working for a company who doesn't even generate a profit? This isn't sustainable. And I think we are going to see a lot of these like insane tech salaries. I don't think we're necessarily going to see them coming back to where they were before. And I think people in tech are starting to worry about this. Let's see, what else do we got here? So this kind of ties in as well. So what have we seen the past couple of years? From 2020 to 2021, 2022, we saw the S&P 500 going up 33% a year. We saw houses in some markets doubling and tripling in value. Even in more normal markets, we saw home prices going up 23% a year, 30% a year, 33% a year. We saw the price of used cars go up 44% over 2 years. Initially, we saw an inflation in assets, right? It's not normal for assets to go up that much in price. Eventually, that inflation in assets trickled down to clothing and things that you buy at the grocery store. And when the cost of everything goes up, the wages need to go up. So we saw an inflation in wages. When wages inflate, the cost of everything continues to go up even more. And that's kind of leveled off, or kind of plateaued, I guess would be a better word. We're still continuing to see an inflation in the service industry, an inflation in the cost of having services that continues to rise. And somebody had asked me the other day, what do you think is like the best business to start in 2023? I think the best business to start in 2023 is some type of service business, some type of business where you're doing a service for companies, for homeowners, for somebody. It's very hard to get services done. There's just not enough workers. A friend of mine had a leak in their roof, which wound up going all the way down the side of their house, ruining all the drywall, going down to the basement. And they signed a contract, wanted to get it fixed, but they're not going to be able to get it fixed until March. There's just not enough workers to do all these services, and the cost of these services continues to go up. So if I were to say what is the number one business to get into in 2023, I think it's some type of service-related business. I think you'll be able to better compete with big companies who in the past you may not have been able to compete with, just because there's so much work and there's not enough companies and not enough workers to do this work. Let's see, what else do we have here? So one thing that's kind of scary to think about are the same people who created this inflation, and the bankers, the Fed, who've created this problem. They have no idea what they're doing, yet they're also the ones who are tasked with solving this problem. And, when inflation, according to them, is running at 9%, 7%, whatever it is, and we have interest rates at 4%, well, no wonder why they're not making a dent in inflation. I think things are going to continue to get worse in 2023. Bed Bath & Beyond gets a delisting warning from the NASDAQ. Stock price tumbles 7%. After the Google layoff news, Google stock price surged about 5%. Wayfair the other day laid off 1,700 workers. Their stock price surged 21%. This may be good short term, but you can't cut your way to profitability. This is a short-term solution. What other layoffs did we see? Just in the last day, we saw Swiggy laid off 380 workers. That's 6% of the workforce. MediBuddy laid off 200 workers. Vox Media laid off 130 workers. Carrot laid off 47 workers. Edifex laid off 30 workers. Citrine laid off 22 workers. And then we have an undisclosed amount of layoffs, or number of layoffs, from Alvara, Capital One, and Zappos, among others. Now that China is opening back up, the demand for oil is going to surge. That means the cost of your gas prices are going to be going up. It also means whatever portion of the items you buy, whatever portion of that is transportation costs, that's going to go up as well if gas prices goes up. And this also means that when we replace our strategic oil reserves, or top back up our strategic oil reserves, which we're drained down to lower gas prices during this inflation and ahead of the midterms, that means it's going to be more expensive for us to top off those strategic oil reserves. I'm not super familiar with this story, so if any of you guys were affected by it, let me know. But last week there was an issue with Bank of America and Zelle. Apparently money was disappearing out of people's accounts and deposits weren't going into people's accounts. Well, Bank of America blamed Zelle. Zelle blamed Bank of America. They basically gave their customers a runaround. I believe Bank of America wound up shutting down their customer service so that you couldn't even reach out to them. And that's troubling, and it's really kind of eye-opening that we really have to, I think everybody should keep a certain amount of cash at home. I think people should try to kind of detach from the system as much as they can. Maybe diversify by splitting your money into a couple bank accounts. So if B of A is down, at least you got your Chase account. If Chase is down, at least you got your Capital One account or whatever other account. I saw an interesting video on YouTube by a YouTube channel where the guy's name is Kevin, a black dude who does like economic stories and things like that. He kind of does doom scrolling and kind of crash stories. Really interesting channel. I don't know how he got the YouTube name Kevin, just simply Kevin. He must have been on YouTube for a long time, because I imagine one word or names like that are tough to get channels for. But he had gone to a bank branch in California. I forget if it was B of A or Chase, but basically everything is automated. There's no workers. You scan your ATM card to get into the bank, and then you can scan your ATM card to get into a conference room. And then rather than seeing a personal banker face to face, you're actually communicating with somebody over a screen. Now, eventually this may not even be a person, and it may be like AI or a robot that you're talking to. At least right now, it is a person. Now, one thing I've always done when I choose a stockbroker, choose a bank, I don't like these only online banks. I don't like these only online stockbrokers. I like the idea that if I have a problem, I can go into a brick and mortar location and I can scream in somebody's face. I can pound on a desk. Maybe it seems silly, but I've always kind of been that way. So, if a run on the bank were to happen, if something like this issue with Bank of America and Zelle were to happen, how frustrating would it be if you go into the bank branch and there's not actually even a person to help you? You're having to scroll your card and go sit in a room and be talked to by maybe a person, maybe a robot. All this automation, the companies are trying to sell this like it's a convenience for us, like it's a huge benefit to us. It actually allows them to operate more efficiently with fewer workers, cutting more jobs. And also, people were literally storming banks, screaming at people, damaging property when Bank of America was stealing their money the other day. And it's kind of interesting that now their bank branches are turning into things where there's no person to go be angry at. Makes you really think. Existing home sales tumbled, falling to the lowest levels since 2010. We're told the consumer is strong, the consumer is flush with money. Mortgage rates are dropping. They're at 6.15%. They're coming down. They're at the lowest levels since last year. And people are flocking to buy. That's what the media wants you to believe. All the while, 7 in 10 new home purchases are falling through. Sellers are giving credits and concessions to buyers, which kind of artificially inflates the home prices, right? If a home sells for $650,000, but the seller gave $100,000 worth of credits to the buyer, in reality that home only sold for $550,000, but on paper it looks like it sold for $650,000. So that's kind of overinflating the housing market. The media, realtors, and the mortgage industry are trying to bring the FOMO back into the market. If you notice, the only people right now who think it's a good time to buy a home are the media, are realtors and people in the real estate industry and people in the mortgage industry. Sales of previously owned homes are down 1.5% in December from the prior month. Homes for sale are up 10.2% from a year ago, so the inventory is increasing every month. We also have more pre-owned homes coming in the market. We have more home builders putting out homes, but people right now aren't interested in buying these homes at the current prices and with high interest rates. The median price of a home in December was $372,000, a 2% increase from a year ago. So even in 2020, or I guess even in late 2022, home prices are still rising, but it's down. This median home price of $372,000 is down from a peak of $413,000 in June of 2022, and housing continues to cool. Let's see, this summer, the summer of 2023 going into the summer of 2024, if there are going to be huge problems in the housing market, and if there are going to be huge problems for the banks who issued these loans, I think it's probably going to happen between the summer of this year and 2024. Let's see. Jim Cramer lists 3 e-commerce stocks that he says will surge in 2023. If history repeats itself, this would be stocks that you would actually want to avoid. Jim Cramer says 6 e-commerce stocks that will surge in 2023 are Etsy, Shopify, Pinterest, Chewy, Mercado Libre, and Lululemon. The only 2 of those stocks that interest me whatsoever would be Shopify and Mercado Libre. But seeing as how Jim Cramer is bullish, I think that means I'll probably stay away from these stocks. Vice Media starts its sales process. They're looking for a $1 billion valuation. And just a couple years ago in 2017, they were valued at $5.7 billion. Saudi Arabia is open to trading in other currencies besides the US dollar. Russia is open to trading oil and natural gas for gold or Bitcoin as well as other currencies. Countries are open to working with other currencies, which would spell big trouble for the US dollar and the US economy. And even Latin America is looking to join some type of single common currency like Brazil, Argentina, and a lot of Central and South America. I thought this was weird. The media is now talking about quote-unquote stroke season following flu season. As far as I'm aware, prior to 2020, or I guess prior to 2021, we never really had a stroke season. So it's weird that now we have a stroke season. And this is on top of the media giving us all these stories about how it's normal for children to have heart attacks and strokes, how hot weather can cause strokes and heart attacks, cold weather can cause strokes and heart attacks, referees blowing whistles, or excitement over getting a good grade on a test could cause young, healthy people and even athletes to have strokes and heart attacks. Really weird how that stuff wasn't happening before the period of 2020 to 2022. Cardano founder Charles Hoskinson is considering buying CoinDesk. So another article came out the other day. They said using Google Maps or Waze aids in cognitive decline. Apparently a lot of these things that we used to have to do, but that now are being done for us by calculators or computers or AI. These things actually kept our brains working, kept our brains healthy, and kept our brains in good condition. Technology has allowed us to not face a lot of the challenges of our minds and bodies that we did in the past, and that's causing people to be less healthy. More classified documents continue to be found at Biden's house. The FBI did a 12-hour search at his home, and it looks like this is going to sink any chance that he had. Probably wasn't a great chance to begin with, but this is going to sink any chance he had at a 2024 re-election, although the man is clearly in cognitive decline and really shouldn't even be president right now. And it seems like the Democrats are trying to get rid of him with all these document leaks and things like that. Riots broke out in Atlanta the other day. Reports of Antifa setting off explosives. CNN is again running with the line about how the protests were fiery but peaceful. And I guess Monday morning, I think it was 5 or 6 Memphis police officers beat a black man to death. The video will be released on Monday. It'll be interesting to see if the city breaks out in riots. A lot of people are expecting Memphis to pretty much burn to the ground on Monday. But one thing that's interesting about this, one, it's wintertime, right? So people are less likely to be out rioting in the wintertime. Memphis isn't as cold as further north, but it's still kind of chilly. Also, it's interesting that they're releasing on a Monday and not over the weekend, probably so people will be working and hopefully will be less likely to riot. And the other interesting thing about this, the 5 or 6 police officers that beat this Memphis man to death, they were all black police officers, so you don't necessarily have the racial component that you did with George Floyd. The restraining order was issued against the Illinois gun ban. So I was getting a flurry of emails from gun shops in Illinois saying, come buy your banned guns. There's a short window or period of time that you can do so. And then the last piece of news for today, the Pentagon says they see the war in Ukraine going well past 2023, and it's looking more and more like the U.S. will not just be giving aid and money and weapons, but may also be getting involved in the war as well. So we just left Afghanistan disgraced, and we can't even go, a full year without getting ourselves into another multi-decade-long war, which we certainly don't have the money to, and which really serves no purpose either. Anyhow, guys, that's the video for today. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts, comments, and opinions about everything we've discussed in today's video, so go ahead and drop them down in the comments section below. If you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below, ring the bell. We'll catch you on the next video. Later, guys.